In 1965, a year after Ian Fleming's death, his heirs published his final James Bond novel, The Man with the Golden Gun. Immediately, the book hits bestseller lists worldwide. Producers Cubby Broccoli and Harry Saltzman consider the benefits of turning the latest 007 adventure into a film. During the shooting of You Only Live Twice in 1966, the producers hint that their next film will be The Man with the Golden Gun, to be shot in Cambodia. And they ask a familiar face to consider playing the role of James Bond.
There was one they were going to do, and they were going to shoot in Cambodia.
Cambodia was considered, and of course we all know what happened there.
And so they had to change their plans, which was at the time I might have been able to do it. And so then I think they went with George Lazenby.
My name's Bond, James Bond.
In 1972, Roger Moore is finally signed as 007. His first film, Live and Let Die, establishes him in the role. Worldwide, audiences and critics alike respond enthusiastically to the new Bond. Anxious to capitalize on their success, the studio asked producers Albert R. Broccoli and Harry Saltzman to immediately begin production of the next 007 epic, the long-delayed filming of The Man with the Golden Gun. Fleming's original novel is set in Jamaica, which has been used as a location in the film Live and Let Die. Harry Saltzman and Cubby Broccoli immediately begin looking for an alternate setting.
The way of making a Bond was to think of the most exotic places you could portray on the screen.
We originally were thinking about shooting Man with a Golden Gun in Iran.
Well, we looked in Beirut because the story was much more based in Beirut, and there was nothing. So Cubby said, okay, wrap it up. Where now?
I'd always loved the Baie d'Alon, which is in Saigon or now Vietnam. And I thought that really wasn't a very bright place to take James Bond.
I found on a tour magazine or illustration these fantastic-looking islands about 10 miles from Phuket in Thailand, which seemed to stand on a little bit of rock and then grow from there.
Phuket, at the time Man with the Golden Gun was made, was a pretty remote place.
We were really in the back of the beyond.
It was perfect. It was in front of an island. It had all, I could just alter the script and to fit it all in. It was perfect.
The location for the picture was to be Thailand and Hong Kong.
I started writing, and they sent for me to come over to Hong Kong.
Soon Mankiewicz finds himself in Thailand, where he meets up with co-producer Harry Saltzman.
We were up in Chiang Mai, and this was typical Harry. And here are the elephants working the teak for us. And it's a wonderful thing to see. The elephants move logs, and they're pushing. And Harry said, this will be great for the elephant stampede. And I thought, there isn't an elephant in the movie.
Apparently for elephant races, they actually get shoes.
And Harry said, I turned to Claude Hudson, who was the production manager, said, we need 200 of those elephant shoes.
On November 6, 1973, less than 5 months after the release of Live and Let Die, director Guy Hamilton rolls cameras on The Man with the Golden Gun, filming the Queen Elizabeth in Hong Kong Harbour with a skeleton crew. Mike Lovett doubles for Roger Moore, who isn't scheduled to start until April of the following year. In the meantime, the film loses its writer, Tom Mankiewicz.
Toward the end of the first draft, I had written myself out a little bit. I went to Cubby and I said, I just think I'm not giving you my best.
I think it had an intriguing story with the idea that the golden bullet and the golden bullet being sent to Bond.
Producers turned to James Bond veteran Richard Maybaum for the next draft, and Maybaum turns to another source for technical help.
He could use some help in the scientific end, and I have a scientific background, and the solar agitator was the sort of MacGuffin that we used. And I did some research on that for him.
With a script underway, producers set about casting. Thankfully, they have their James Bond, but finding the villain proves challenging.
I wanted Jack Palance. I thought he would be just the perfect Scaramanga.
Palance turns the role down, but director Guy Hamilton has an inspired choice, Christopher Lee.
Chris Lee turned out to be wonderful as Scaramanga. because he was even taller than Roger and it was very imposing.
I'd known Christopher from the time I came out of the army in 1948, when we shared a dressing room along with 30 other young hopeful actors at Denham Studios.
I was bored with him playing Dracula all day long, and so was he in a way, and so it was exciting for him to play something different.
We sat for lunch. He had the script. He said, we're going to make a film called The Man with the Golden Gun. I said, you'll find it. Scaramanga's a breeze. So I went back home with the script. I read it. I said to my wife, Bond, James Bond, Ian, Cubby. I said, sounds like a great idea. And rang my agent, said, I'll take it, I'll do it.
Lee has previously worked with Cubby Broccoli, having appeared in the Warwick picture Cockleshell Heroes. But he also has another connection to the world of 007.
His cousin was Ian Fleming.
Ian and I really, I suppose, knew each other best on the golf course because we were both members of Royal St. George's at Sandwich for many, many years. The last time I played with him was not very long before he died. He used to stalk around the course with his cigarette holder.
Like his famous cousin, Lee was also involved in intelligence activities in World War II.
When people say to me, you know, were you in this, were you in that, did you work in this, did you work in that? I always used to say, can you keep a secret? And they would say, yes, yes, and I would say, so can I.
Lee is already very familiar with the film's source.
The Man with the Golden Gun in the book is just a thug. They made it much more interesting as a character in the story because they made him the dark side of Bond.
To us, Mr. Bond, we are the best.
The filmmakers hastily set about finding the two female leads.
I'd seen Ursula Andress come out of the sea with the bikini, and I just thought no one could ever look that fantastic. After having seen that, I always wanted to be a Bond girl. When I read that Cubby Broccoli was doing another Bond film, I went to his office and I said, you know, I want to play Mary Goodnight. And he said, but you don't understand. The character in the book, we sometimes don't use the whole book. We just sometimes use part of the plot and the names. And with that, he just sent me back home.
Producer Cubby Broccoli has already decided on an actress to play Scaramanga's doomed mistress.
I got a call from my agent to meet with the Broccolis in New York. And was very excited, of course, about the prospect of being in a Bond movie.
I went to the States and did another movie and read in the paper that a Swedish girl called Maud Adams was doing the new Bond film, and I was devastated.
Britt had assumed that I had gotten the role that she wanted, and she said, I really hated you in the beginning.
As we know, she played the villain's girlfriend, and I came back to London. Cubby called me up and he said, here you are, and he put the manuscript in my lap, and it was like a dream come true.
A couple of Swedes. I was even able to talk to them from time to time in their own language.
He speaks all those languages. He has one of those photographic minds.
As casting proceeds and a start date nears, Tom Mankiewicz returns to do more work on the script.
And they came to me and said, would you rewrite Dick Maybaum's rewrite of your rewrite?
The one-liners that you remember in, or I remember in Bond. Tom came up with some really good ones. I'm now aiming precisely at your groin. So speak, or forever hold your peace.
The final script provides Bond with a new ally.
My agent asked me if I would like to be in a James Bond picture. I was a bit audacious when I was younger. So I said, I don't do laundryman, gardener, or houseboy.
And a popular character from Live and Let Die returns.
What are you? Some kind of doomsday machine, boy!
The producer, Cubby, called me up at home.
Sheriff Pepper, a secret agent.
I want you to go over to Macy's and buy a lot of colored shirts and bring them with you, you know. And of course, I went to Macy's and bought like 5 or 6 shirts. They're all made in Bangkok.
Oh, he was so funny. He was so much larger than life.
One role still remains to be cast.
Bonjour, Monsieur Bond. I am Knick-Knack.
Knick-Knack in my script was called Demi-Task.
To play the henchman opposite 6'4" Christopher Lee, producers choose a 3'9" French painter turned actor.
I call him Merveille Vichyssois. He was the sweetest little guy.
Hervé Villechaize was a great character. He was great, I won't say womanizer, but he had a great deal of charm.
We used to have a lot of laughs because we'd say things in French to each other.
He used to do quite a lot of drawing when we were out on the location. As a matter of fact, he used to gift me with drawings.
He would leave a flower on my typewriter and type a little note, you know, a sort of little love letter.
He would slip them underneath my door into my hotel room in the mornings sometime.
So I would type him a little love letter and put it somewhere where he would find it.
Everybody liked him enormously.
With the cast assembled, production gets underway in Thailand in early April 1974, less than a year after the release of Live and Let Die.
We flew from London to Bangkok and spent the night in Bangkok.
The press was going to be there to interview us all. And I thought it would be sort of a nice one-on-one situation. And I walked into this ballroom with a horde of people and cameras running. That gave me sort of the first indication of what I was in for.
The cast and crew soon leave Bangkok for a stunning but remote location, Khao Ping Khan Island near Phuket.
Phuket in those days was a very small native village with a very small landing strip, very small, cut out of the jungle. And we flew down there from Bangkok.
You think of all the five-star hotels we've stayed in our time and all the glamorous places.
I thought, well, of course we're going to have fantastic hotels wherever we go.
We stopped outside this place, and I thought, oh, my God.
They'd put on a polished granite floor instead of a wooden one.
We refurnished it and repainted it.
Telephones, it was impossible to telephone from there. If you sent a telex, it would take 3 days.
Guy Hamilton told me years and years and years later that, in fact, the building that we were in had been the local brothel.
I didn't want to mention that.
We sent the ladies on holiday, left half the unit in Bangkok, and the workers came down.
I was a little shocked. I said, oh, my God, how long am I going to be here?
And we were there for 10 days. I can't tell you what it was like.
Everything left a certain amount to be desired.
And we stayed in the bordello and went off to work every morning in a little boat.
Wasn't considered safe because there were real pirates there.
Which is not one place I've gone back to.
We had to travel an hour and a half by car and truck to a landing stage, and then from there take longboats.
And all of a sudden a chopper came in. And I, oh, this is nice, we'll get a ride back. And into it got Guy Hamilton and Derek Cracknell and the cameraman, and they waved goodbye. And I really wanted to kill him.
Well, you forget about the tribulations and the trials of being somewhere that is a difficult place because of what you get on the screen.
Phuket, which today is a huge tourist attraction, and largely thanks to Bond.
I think we discovered that what is now known as the James Bond Islands.
There are tourist boats, and the whole tourist industry is built up all over the place.
The Miami Beach of Southeast Asia, it's a huge resort.
Christopher Lee is amazed by the props.
I couldn't believe that when I was supposedly drinking the black velvet, I couldn't believe that it would be Guinness and champagne, and there would be oysters and Tabasco, but there were. I thought, well, you know, they'll fake it, they'll have to. No, the oysters were fresh and very good.
Christopher Lee not only enjoys good food, but also good humor on the location.
We had to walk into this overhang. Out came 1,000 bats. Christopher said, "Not now, Stanislaw."
We used to love to tease him in a way, so we would bring up Dracula whenever we could.
So he had to be exposed without a shirt.
He had 3 nipples in the movie.
It's much more common than people think.
His body was rather white, and so he had to be painted every day and have the nipples stuck on.
I asked my doctor about it. I said, this is a bit bizarre. He said, oh, no, not at all. He said, it's quite frequent.
There was no running hot water. So poor Christopher, at the end of a day's shooting, would be walking backwards and forwards across the road from our catering wagon with buckets of hot water so he could wash himself off.
It wasn't difficult to laugh in a Bond film, certainly not with Roger around.
She used to call me Bert, and he used to call Maud Mud and Bert. Those were our names.
One cast member particularly enjoys the splendors of Thailand.
He loved Thailand because there he could be out all night having fun and partying.
Hervé had a voracious appetite for the ladies.
He really looked quite frightful for the first few hours and was asleep a good deal of the day, I think as a result of his efforts the night before.
He used to focus his attention on me from time to time. I would just give it back to him, and it was just a game we had going.
Back in Bangkok, producers face problems of an entirely different scale.
The Thai production manager comes in and says, we'll be going on our way at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. The car will pick you up at 6:30. And oh, by the way, Mr. Broccoli, your elephant shoes are ready. And he said, what? My what?
Harry got a little carried away and without thinking through things or researching them.
And here came this box of crates of 200 elephant shoes. He said, what the hell are these? I said, oh my God, it's from Harry with the elephant stampede. And Cubby said, what elephant stampede? There isn't an elephant in the movie. So I don't know if you've ever tried to unload 100 elephant shoes, 400 elephant shoes or whatever the hell it is, but it's not easy.
At the end of April, the crew moves to Hong Kong.
Each of our suites had its own private valet. We were really treated royally.
You can't go too wrong with Hong Kong.
For all the hard times we had in Phang Ngo, they made it up in the other places where they could.
Filming continues at the luxurious Dragon Garden estate, which becomes Hai Fat's home in the film. Shooting in the study, Christopher Lee faces his nemesis, the golden gun.
Very difficult to put this wretched gun together.
The pen, I believe, came from Dunhill's for the barrel, and the other parts came from a firm called Calibri, the cigarette case and the lighter, and we had cufflinks, I believe, for the trigger. The final gun was made by a silversmith in London and gold-plated.
There was one that actually fired a cap, so you saw the flash. There was one that's completely solid, and there was the one I assembled and disassembled. It's difficult enough even when I was looking at it.
So we were talking, I was sitting at the desk, and suddenly I went like this, and I'd got the gun all assembled.
When I was doing it without looking at it, it was even more difficult.
And he said, how the hell did you do that? So I said, well, I take it home in the evening and practice when I'm watching TV.
Mid-May finds the crew in a typical Bond setting, a casino, but in an unusual location, Macau.
You had people coming from all over the world to be part of the excitement in those casinos.
I've seen Cubby in those places where the crew at the end of the day shooting, they've gone in and they're losing, and Cubby would go around, great handfuls of chips and give them to everybody.
Apart from the action on the gaming tables, producers also have physical action in store for Roger Moore.
Bangkok, Hong Kong, absolutely full of karate schools and taekwondos and every known form of martial arts.
Filming at the location has its difficulties. Call sheets remind the crew to refrain from wandering around the grounds and gives them detailed instructions on what to do in case of snake bite. At the end of May, the crew films the boat chase through the canals or klongs at Bangkok's floating market.
Going around the corner, they were a bit hairy because the propeller used to have to fly all over the place. Hence the idea of Bond using it as a weapon.
Roger was out in his klong with that boat and doing a lot of the running around.
I don't think they undershot on those. They were really moving.
For Clifton James, a New York-trained actor, shooting on the exotic locations is like a holiday.
You porty heads has no more idea of traffic control than a goonie bird.
But in working with the animals, there are always surprises.
While they were filming, I said, get away. The elephant lowered his head and knocked me right in the klong. Guy Hamilton was scared to death. He thought I was killed. I fell about 10 feet in the mud.
But the real dangers await Jay Milligan and his driving team, who set out on Saturday, June the 1st, to perform the film's signature stunt at Klong Rancid.
I was sitting in a hotel room in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, with a competitor of mine who had also done stunt work for Bond. And I had a phone call, and this fellow on the other end said, "This is Cubby Broccoli in London. Are you the chap who designed or did the car stunt in the Houston Astrodome
We thought it was kind of an interesting stunt. We weren't quite sure how we could use it in the film.
I had a competitor who had just done all the stunt work in a Bond movie, and he's telling me that he's preparing himself to go to Singapore to do The Man with the Golden Gun. So I had to excuse him from our breakfast meeting and then get back to Cubby Broccoli.
It was worked out on a computer.
The computer was used by the National Highway Safety Bureau in the investigation and reconstruction of single-vehicle automobile accidents worldwide. The firm that happened to do that was a company in Buffalo, division of Cornell University. An ingenious engineer there by the name of Raymond McHenry visualized that we could do a complete football spiral type with a full-size automobile.
The exercise is quite complicated because the car has to be perfectly balanced. The steering wheel is in the middle.
The car would have been cut in half, widened about 2 inches. Everything was then centralized and balanced.
We found a driver who we knew through the business whose name was Lauren Willett.
Bumps Willard.
Bumps did the actual jump.
I sat with Cubby Broccoli for many hours, and we talked about if the car failed, if the takeoff ramp broke, that we would have a driver in a seatbelt and a 3-point restraining harness in the water.
There were ambulances there.
We put a crane out of the camera's view.
You've never seen such a mass of lifting equipment and very worried people too, I think.
30 seconds before the stunt was to come off, the divers were underwater with a cable and with a hook, because we could have had the car and the driver out of the water quicker than just going in after the driver.
The driver, of course, was flat on his face in the front with a dummy Bond and dummy sheriff on either side, and he was completely covered in black.
There is 2 tachometers aboard.
And he controlled the accelerator and the brake with his feet behind him.
The speed is absolutely checked before it goes, then off you go.
And action, and everybody's a bit white-knuckled.
I couldn't look. I had to close my eyes.
The rest is automatic. You hang on, cross your fingers.
Roar of applause and cheers. Naturally, relief mostly, I would think, admiration.
1 take, and that was it.
It was done in 1 take. It was unbelievable.
I still have a great picture and vivid memory of Roger Moore coming up to the driver and to me with tears in his eyes saying, "You fellas really made me look good."
Guy Hamilton didn't like it because it didn't look real. It just went,
It's so perfect. It worked absolutely so perfectly. And everybody said, well, my God, what are you worried about? And I remember him saying, I wonder if we ought to do it again.
I remember Cubby saying to me, the thing was, it was too perfect.
I also remember the answer he got from Mr. Willard, who I remember rightly said, we are certainly not going to do it again, not with me, because that's the first time I've done it.
He had never done the stunt prior to that.
Oh, he could easily have been killed. Easily. That was probably the most remarkable thing in the entire film.
It came out to be one of the great stunts.
The next day, the filmmakers had more auto action in store for Milligan and his drivers.
The caretakers in the Chok Chai building knew there was a movie taking place in the morning, and they went and waxed the floors the night before. Guy Hamilton is up on a building hollering, "Go, go, go," I said, and my tires are spinning. Went out into traffic, and then other associate directors and producers are hollering at me on the radio, "Catch the car." So I went up on an island, and I drove about a quarter of a mile on an island with 2 wheels on the road and 2 wheels up on the dirt island.
You had to swerve around corners.
And I can hear the producers and the directors screaming, "Jay, go, it's great, keep going."
I don't remember anybody ever getting hurt. I was all strapped in pretty good, you know.
But all that was done, of course, by me, with stunt men in cars surrounding me. So there was no danger of an unauthorized driver smashing into me, which, believe you me, could easily have happened in Bangkok.
We wrecked a lot of cars in Bangkok.
Cubby's worries of meeting the schedule are noted on the call sheet of June the 7th, asking the unit to work on their upcoming day off. Meanwhile, shooting commences at a kickboxing stadium.
That was a normal boxing stadium with the wire mesh and the betting and everything else which went on. Whilst there was a real boxing match going on, we came in and we used the atmosphere. And they all joined in wonderfully, you know.
It was a huge production with so many people in one set.
Everybody's yelling at the tops of their voices, and everybody's betting.
It wasn't really difficult for me, since all I had to do is just be stone dead.
The production returns to England in late June and is immediately faced with a crisis. Cameraman Ted Moore falls ill and is unable to continue. Cubby must immediately find a replacement or risk blowing the already tight schedule. He contacts noted cinematographer Oswald Morris.
He says you can have anything you want in equipment, in money or anything, but he has one stipulation. You've got to promise him, if you would do it, you finish the film on August or something, because he's got mass release dates in November.
Morris comes on board and shooting resumes without a break in the schedule on the interior sets of Scaramanga's Island at Pinewood Studios. As the schedule winds down, the unit moves to Bovingdon Airfield to film scenes of Scaramanga's flying car.
That was based on a real car plane.
There was a flying car, yes, and that's why it was scripted around a flying car. But unfortunately, the guy killed himself with that car before we started shooting. So they came to me to make another one very quickly. So I built a full-size version and several models which flew.
The original flying car, which was very well done, was done by Johnny Steers.
At the end of July in Pinewood, the first unit works on one of the film's most imaginative sets, Scaramanga's funhouse.
Guy was fascinated with what a killer would do to keep his edge up.
That was probably one of the most difficult sets to conceive. It had no form. It had no direction purposely. It was built out of mirrors, images, space, height, depth.
That can be an absolute pain in the butt, shooting with those mirrors, but they were so well designed that you could virtually put the camera wherever you wanted.
Meanwhile, the second unit creates explosions on the solar power complex.
We were all watching when she had to do this particular run, and we knew that there were going to be explosions all the way along her path.
I was very scared, I have to admit. Very, very, very scared.
And she wasn't wearing very much at the time.
One of them went off and really, it didn't burn my bum, but, you know, you're very vulnerable when you're half naked.
She did freeze at one point.
I freaked out. I threw myself on the floor. I said, I'm not doing this anymore. And he just grabbed me and said, we've got to go. Because if the timing isn't there, then the explosions go off and that's the end of me.
All these finale sets have to be big, you know. There's no point in being on a Bond film if you don't make one big finale set.
You can't really blow up a set that size. It's too expensive to make everything as a breakaway.
It was even more fun to see it being blown up in miniature.
And of course that's what we did. We built quite a large miniature.
The Man with the Golden Gun stands as a Bond film with all the right ingredients. Exotic locations, beautiful women, amazing stunts, fantastic sets, even a score by famed Bond film composer John Barry. The film also marks the end of an era. Producer Harry Saltzman leaves his long partnership with Cubby Broccoli, who becomes the sole guiding force behind James Bond. For Cubby Broccoli, the film is a launching point for the Bond adventures to follow.
strewn on this fair